In the ancient world, the city gate functioned as the supreme court. This is where King David's son Absalom began his takeover, not with a military strike, but by hijacking the justice system. He stood beside these arches, intercepting citizens and telling them the king's administration was too broken to hear their claims. By promising a better justice, he systematically stole the loyalty of the people. The crisis accelerated into a full coup when David's most trusted counselor, Ahithophel, joined the rebellion. Ahithophel's advice was so highly regarded, it was likened to the word of God. His defection weaponized David's own inner circle against him, turning intimate knowledge into a political death sentence. Psalm 55 records David's internal response to this betrayal, a state scholars describe as entropic anxiety, the visceral sensation of order unraveling, where the foundations of reality feel as though they are dissolving. In his distress, David imagines sprouting wings like a dove to fly away and settle in the wilderness. He isn't looking for a battlefield. He is searching for a way to escape the profound pain of a covenant companion becoming an enemy. A coup built on intimate betrayal is far more lethal than a foreign invasion. It shatters the relational trust that holds a kingdom together, leaving the leader psychologically isolated even among his own people. David chooses to abandon Jerusalem entirely. He refuses to turn the civilian capital into a slaughterhouse, leading his household into exile to spare the city from a siege. As they flee, David orders the priests to take the Ark of the Covenant back to the city. He refuses to weaponize God's presence for his own survival, choosing to wait in the wilderness to see if he still finds favor in the eyes of the Lord. The king descends into a liminal space, crossing the Kidron Valley and ascending the Mount of Olives. He walks barefoot with his head covered, weeping as he moves from the center of power into the vulnerability of the desert. This physical exit is an act of radical submission. David trades his defensive walls for a total dependence on divine providence, leaving the fate of the monarchy to a higher justice. David's humiliation is made public. A man named Shimei follows the king's company along the ridges, throwing stones and screaming curses. David absorbs the abuse, forbidding his soldiers from retaliating and accepting the shame as part of his divine chastening. Even in exile, David deploys a sophisticated counterintelligence strategy. He embeds his friend Hushai as a double agent in Absalom's court. Hushai's job is to dismantle the rebellion from the inside, funneling intelligence back to David through a network of priests and hidden messengers. Ahithophel proposes a surgical strike to kill David while he is weary. Hushai counters by playing on Absalom's vanity, advising him to wait and gather a massive national army instead. Absalom takes the bait, granting David time to escape across the Jordan River. Ahithophel, realizing the delay has doomed the rebellion, returns to his home and takes his own life. He accurately reads the collapse of his own conspiracy before it even reaches the battlefield. Hushai's psychological manipulation stripped the rebellion of its military momentum. By corrupting the council of the rebel court, David's intelligence network neutralized the immediate threat and forced a conventional conflict on his own terms. The conflict finally moves to the forest of Ephraim, where the brutal, jagged terrain becomes a weapon against the rebel forces. In the thick woods, the landscape itself claimed more lives than the sword. As Absalom's army collapses, the usurper tries to flee on a mule. His head becomes trapped in the branches of a great oak tree, leaving him suspended while his mount continues on without him. David had given strict orders to protect his son, but Joab, his lead commander, ignores the king's mercy. He finds Absalom trapped in the branches and executes him on the spot, ending the rebellion with a direct act of insubordination. The military victory is absolute, but it leaves the rightful king in an agonizing position. The war is won, but the cost of the crown is the life of his own son. While the army celebrates, David retreats to a private chamber, paralyzed by a father's grief. He mourns so loudly that the joy of the victory is instantly smothered by the king's personal trauma. This visible mourning alienates the loyal soldiers who just risked their lives. They sneak back into the camp in silence, feeling ashamed of the victory that saved the king's life. Joab delivers a harsh, pragmatic rebuke, telling David that his grief is a political disaster. If the king does not acknowledge the men who fought for him, the entire coalition will abandon him before morning. David forces himself to suppress his sorrow. He washes his face and takes his seat at the gate, signaling to the army and the nation that the sovereign has returned to his duties. Maintaining the kingdom requires the sacrifice of personal emotional closure. David chooses the stability of the nation over the luxury of his own mourning. The journey to restoration concludes at the Jordan River. This water marks the final boundary as David prepares to re-enter his capital. The bank is crowded with the very people who betrayed him. Those who cursed the king during his flight now rush to the water to beg for mercy, fearing the vengeance of a restored monarch. David chooses a strategy of calculated mercy. He refuses to execute Shimei and instead honors the loyalists who sustained him in the desert. He pieces the nation back together by absorbing the past betrayals rather than avenging them. David's legacy was secured through this crucible. He survived the collapse of his kingdom by absorbing the betrayal, submitting to a higher justice, and ultimately rebuilding his throne on the foundation of radical mercy.